The superannuation gap. Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian.Heise here, and welcome to another episode of HeiseSays. Grab your stein of coffee and let's have a look at this article from news.com.au, which is discussing the gap between how much superannuation we should have and how much people actually have. Now, I'm not really a fan of mandatory or compulsory payments into superannuation as a way to encourage people to save or force people to save. I would rather we improve our financial literacy and make it voluntary and force the super funds to compete for the privilege of having our money. Find other ways to allow people to save. It's most frustrating if you're forced to sit on a pile of money that you can't access. And you can see why so many people took the opportunity to get access to it. I understand all the people that are saying, you can't say people have no financial literacy and then, allow them to spend their own money. Yeah, you can. That's the thing. You're either for government intervention into our lives and be acting paternalistic, or you advocate for individual responsibility. Those are the two sides. If you're a paternalistic and want an authoritarian government to take care of you and to force people to do things for their own good, or if you advocate for education and individual responsibility, you're on the other side. They're the two sides of it. And I can see how meeting somewhere in the middle is probably a sensible compromise. But, we need to look at a whole wealth of suggestions. I've got very wealthy friends who just haven't bothered to, rather than buying property or doing things in super, they've bought it through their business just so they could have access to the money, just so you can have control over it. Wouldn't it be better if you could have tax-free savings accounts that you can still access or use, draw upon for your house payments? Or even, one thing I quite like is the suggestion from Palmer, allowing people to write off the interest on their primary residence. Maybe we should flip that. Rather than giving the incentives for investors to get into property, we should give incentives for people to buy a home to live in. Because you'll see in this article, that's one of the most important things when you get to retirement is owning a home. Because how many people will get forced to save in super, accruing interest in their home, living stressfully, and then get it all and just pay off their home right at the end. Hopefully, if they have enough. So how much money should you have in your superannuation by age? There is a massive gap between the amount of money we need to have stashed away and what we have. Here's how much you should need by age. The majority of Australians are falling short in their superannuation savings, which could leave them in a dire situation when it comes time to retire. Well, are we even going to be able to retire? Are people going to be able to retire when they get old? Is that an outdated boomer concept in some ways? I mean, do you expect to get the pension, guys? Let me know if you think there'll be a pension there when you're old enough, or they'll inflate away the value of the pension. It'll be like the the doll or the New Start, so little it's virtually useless. We'll have to see. Recent CanStar research suggests 30-year-old men and women would need to have around $61,000 in their super account today to be on track for a comfortable retirement lifestyle. But on average, they're currently short between $35,000 and $39,000. Well, you know why? It's simply because our wage growth has stagnated. Our economic growth per person has been going down. Our GDP growth we're still growing, except for that recession we just had, but per capita it's been trending down, everyone. That's the thing. That's why. And the problem is you're going to see more and more calls to force to have increases in super, increases to contributions. And a lot of people don't realize it's their money. So as an employer, it's frustrating when you're paying a big chunk of money to someone and they don't even see it. They don't even appreciate it. It'd be much nicer if people had to voluntarily, I'd say we should get rid of pay-as-you-go pay-as-you-go tax as well, PAYG, and make people pay their own tax. Actually make people type into their computer every week or every fortnight and transfer that money to the ATO. I bet you nothing will shift the Overton window faster. You'll have so many people that will suddenly change their political perspectives if they were forced to actually pay the tax themselves. I can't see it happening because, it's the same thing. It's more authoritarian, paternalistic, forcing the employers to take responsibility for workers. You're too dumb to pay your own taxes. We'll have to do it for you. So, anyway, back to this. Women currently in their 60s face the biggest super gap of more than 275,000 based on this data. Yeah, but okay, if they're 60 now, what were they? 40 in 2000, and then 20 years before that they were 20 in 1980. What about it's a different life, different demographic. Super wasn't even as prevalent back then. I mean, oh well, that's how they paint these things. It's like all this stuff. They have to paint it in a particular way to sell a story. CanStar's financial expert Stephen Mickenbecker said this was sobering news for most Australians. For every age group, the gap between the required balance for a comfortable retirement living and the average balance is massive, Mr. Mickenbecker said. For most groups, they are only a third of the way there. So that means, you got to pile in further and further, guys. But does this just count your super investments? What if you've got investments outside of super? And I bet you this is all based on people owning their home at retirement, having it fully paid off. Because what if you don't? What if you're a third of the way there, you're still renting, and you're trying to get in the market? It's potentially a depressing future for a lot of people, and people wonder why they're getting disenfranchised with our political leaders. Australia, the lucky country. For a lot of people, it isn't, sadly, anymore. The below table estimates how much super people of different ages should have in their super today to be able to afford a comfortable retirement. So for a 30-year-old male, you need to have 61 grand. The average is 25 grand. So for a 40-year-old male, the average is 56,000. You're meant to have 154,000. So like nearly 100 grand more in your super sitting there. So 50 years, you need to have 271. The average is 111. 60, you need to have 430,000. The average is 180. Well, guys, we're not going to be able to retire. So has super actually worked? If the goal of super is to reduce the dependency on the pension, has it worked? Doesn't look like it, does it? Not based on this. Here you go, 30-year-old women, they've got 21 grand, they should have 61. I mean, it's all the same amounts. 60-year-old women are 154,000. So Mr. Meckenbecker warned that we are talking about luxury living on these figures. And it assumes you already own your... we aren't talking about luxury living. And it assumes you already own your own home. That's the thing there. Owning your home. But the problem is, the government is throwing everything they can at housing. They're creating a bubble. Look at what's happened. There was an economic recession. Huge lockdowns everywhere. And what did the government do? Just chuck stimulus at housing. More and more stimulus at housing, everyone, because they need to keep that bubble going. So when you're younger, trying to get up, when you're in these age groups here, trying to get into housing, you've got to save a lot more of a deposit. You can't afford to put more extra into your super because you want to get into a home. You want to at least own your own home. And home ownership is going down in this country. Housing affordability is getting worse. So a comfortable requirement means holidays and dining out, not yachts and fine wine. And the number assumes you're living in your own home without a mortgage, he said. Holidays and dining out, well, that's a luxury. Honestly, holidays and dining out is a luxury. Everyone, that's just, our quality of life, I think moving forward for a lot of Australians, isn't going to be the same as your parents. It's not going to be the same level as previous generations. You can't buy a house, which is what a lot of people are aiming for the same, well, as a ratio of wages, it's nowhere near the same. It's much worse now. It's much higher. It's not as affordable. Housing affordability has gone down. And this is with two people working. You can't run a household with one. It's a lot harder. Well, you can do it. And it's exacerbating the difference in, people that are doing well and people that are struggling. The news will be even worse for Australians who accounted for the $35.5 billion taken out of super this year during the early release scheme. The gap is greatest for 60-year-olds who spent the first 10 years of their working life without superannuation contributions. A 60-year-old with an average super balance now has little chance to catch up, and the future looks likely to be part pension initially and eventually full pension, and a significantly lower standard of living. The situation is far worse for women, he added. For women, the magnitude of the gap is worse, with average super balances 15 to 20% lower than men, he pointed out. Mr. Mickenbecker added that there's still time for young Australians to catch up. The young can catch up, but it's time to get into repair mode as soon as incomes are restored post-COVID, he said. This means making extra salary sacrifices into superannuation during the years when they are also saving for a first home. Most time, home ownership comes first. See, and that's the problem. If you want to get all access to your money, you want to get into a house. I mean, how much easier would it be if you could use your super for a primary residence deposit for your first home? What would you rather? Would you rather be sitting there, at 40 with 150 grand in super and still hundreds of thousands in a mortgage? Or would you rather just have no mortgage at all and then build up your savings? You've also got to think about the whole stress part of your life as well. Look at here you've got the woman stressing over how to make it all happen. This is a big part of your life, guys. Frankly, if you can live a more comfortable life on less money and debt-free, sometimes it's a better life, everyone. All the dining out and stuff in your old age doesn't mean crap if you've been working yourself to death for 40 years, if you've been constantly under stress. My beard is going white, not just because of my children, the fact that I've had so many daughters. It was going white when I started. Okay, no, who am I kidding? It's been going white forever, but still working and stress is a part of it. I guess that's just the point of my life where I've reached. I've found that living a less stressful life is much, much happier and much more enjoyable and, well, frankly, more profitable, but still. So pay yourself first. According to money educator and financial expert Vanessa Stoikov, if Aussies want to retire comfortably and not be destitute later in life, they need more in savings. Well, this is the thing. The government takes so much money from people. How much taxes are we paying? And I know people will say, the poor don't pay taxes. Yes, they do. They do. Even, every time you go out shopping, every time you buy this, every time you buy petrol, tax. She suggested to start as young as possible, while older Australians need to act fast. Well, it's going to be hard. We're in the first recession in 28 years, everyone. Our unemployment rate has shot up. We've got another article we'll look at with JobKeeper being cut today, another $200, and the number of businesses or employed people that are being supported by this is a little scary when you think about it. So you can try and guilt people for not having enough in their super, but if they're barely scraping by enough to buy a bloody home, it's tough. The younger generations has the most time to recover. When you're young is the time, she said. The older you are, the more you need to think about it and faster. Ms. Stoikov said we all need to make sure we're putting around 10% of our income in superannuation, whether we're employed by someone or a self-employed contractor, in order to be able to live comfortably when we retire. If you're a contractor, you have to pay yourself super. It's hard to hustle when you're older, she added. Pay yourself first. Put 10% of everything you earn into your super straight away. 9.5% is what your employer pays. When you do a $1,500 job, put $150 in your super every job straight away. She added, it's not a bad idea to top up how much you're contributing to your super either. If you've put 4% more in your super in your 20s, then you'll recover your balance. You'll be okay, and 4% isn't much for young people. You won't feel it. You won't be giving up that much, she said. Savings for the future comes down to now versus later. Do I want the money now, or do I save for it later? Do you want to get a house now, or do you want to get it 5 years later? This is the thing as well, where you've got a lot of people. What would you rather if you were in Sydney? Get into the market 5 years earlier and have no super, and then get that capital appreciation in the property market? And this is the problem. It's going crazy. We've got one bubble fighting another bubble. You've got people put more money in your super, lock more money away. This is the problem. You get all these different interventions and things conflicting with each other. And there's no political will to allow the market correct. There's none now. We've seen, look at the drastic interventions the government will do. I've been joking about Mortgage Keeper, it may become reality. What's going to happen at this election? This election this year is going to be really interesting to watch. To see as these stimulus start to be removed, as the JobKeeper starts to be pulled back. What crazy things can the government put forward? And we're all going to pay for it, everyone. Remember, the government doesn't have any money. The government just has a workforce of tax cattle. So, Ms. Stoikov suggested to check your super balance regularly with a super fund app. The more power people take in their super, the better, she said. Take care of yourself and don't expect the government can. Yeah, no, that is fantastic advice. I agree with her 100%. You can't trust the government, guys. I mean, we've been proven. That's been proven this year more than anything. You can't trust them to take care of you. You can trust them to screw you over. I'd say that's it. So how much you need? Ms. Stoikov pointed out that the reason superannuation was created so people could have a good life in retirement. The average couple need around 40,000 and singles need 28,000, but that's modest. It's very hard to live on 28 grand a year, she explained. To be comfortable, you need around 42,000 a year as a single or 62,000 for couples. But she said that's assuming you own your own home and don't have a mortgage lingering over your head. If you don't own your own home, it's going to be a lot harder to live a comfortable life, she said. If comfortable is 62,000 a year as a couple and you're 65 and want to live until you're 85, which is not out of the question, that's 20 years of 62,000 you have to find. That's 1.2 million, she explained. So women are worse off. Around 80% of Australians are falling short of what they should have in super. It's 43,000 for a single and 62,000 as a couple, and you've got to own your own home. You've got a massive gap, she said. Divorced women and women out of the workforce are the most severely affected. There are a lot of examples of women who've been divorced and have no super, she said. You can't eat the letterbox. A lot of the time you have to sell the family home to cash flow their living. Ms. Stoikov added that homelessness, particularly among women, is not uncommon due to lack of retirement savings. The average balance for men is 270,000 in retirement, and for women it's 157 because of the broken work patterns and women raising children, she said. Well, this is the thing. When you're a couple, you're meant to be together. If you're married, maybe there should be incentives to pool all the super together, rather than having it separate. But I know it's all a mess because people don't want to stay together forever. Apparently, I mean, how many people actually combine all their finances? That's the more interesting question. I wonder how. I need to look into that and how prevalent it is. I've been watching a whole lot of Dave Ramsey, and he combines all his finances. I mean, Rachel and I, we combined it years ago. We have our own business, so it's kind of pointless having separate bank accounts or separate finances. So don't rely on the government, again. Given the year we've had, Ms. Stoikov reminds Australians that we don't know what the future holds and warned not to rely on government support. Who knows what's ahead, she proclaimed. People assume they're going to get the government pension, but who knows what's coming. While she admitted that the government has helped bail us out of the pandemic, and compared to other countries in the world we're lucky, she warned against relying on the government support through the pension since it's not a lot of money to live off, and it's based on the assumption that you own your own home. Own your own home. And I mean, how many of these people who weren't forced to put a portion of their super, their wages into super back in the day? Then they can get in a home where it's only, 2 times the average wage, where the cost of servicing it is a lot easier. While the government enabled people to withdraw money from their super this year to try to stay afloat during the pandemic, she doesn't agree with people accessing super to get a home deposit. It's meant to be for a comfortable life, not to buy a dwelling. See, that's the problem. It should be up to the individual. The government is forcing you to put money aside to have a comfortable life in your old age. So you have a shit life right up until there. Awesome. Awesome. Bloody awesome. What do you reckon, everyone? What do you think? Are you a fan of compulsory superannuation? Do you think people should be forced to save? Or do you think people should have more control over their own money? And what would you rather? Would you rather be debt-free with a tiny super balance after you've paid off your house? Or would you rather, still be paying that mortgage for years upon years upon years? Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments down below. Please like, share, subscribe to the channel. If you're a fan and want to support the content I create here, there are a few ways you can. You can join us on YouTube or Patreon. You can support us using our affiliate links at Amazon, eBay, Independent Reserve, or AussieBroadband. You can buy our merch from HeiseSays. You can use Gold Pass from the Perth Mint, or support us via PayPal. Take care, everyone, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.